I never thought I'd be telling this story, but I need to get this out. Maybe some of you listening have been through something similar and can help me make sense of what happened. My name is Jason, and I was married to Olivia for 8 years. We're both in our early 40s, no kids yet, but we'd been talking about starting a family. She's a corporate lawyer. I work in financial analysis. We were always what our friends called the power couple. At least, that's what I thought. About 3 months before everything fell apart, things started feeling different. It's hard to describe because it wasn't any one big thing. Olivia began working later, which wasn't unusual in her field, but she seemed changed when she came home. Distant. When I'd ask about her day, she'd give these short, almost defensive responses. Just work stuff, you wouldn't understand the details. That hurt more than I expected. We used to share everything. Then came the small things that added up. Her phone always face down at dinner. Stepping into the other room to take calls. New perfume I didn't recognize. Working weekends she'd never mentioned beforehand. When I suggested we plan a vacation, she told me she was too busy to think about it right now. The worst part was doubting myself. Was I being paranoid? Is this just what happens in long marriages? My friend Marcus kept saying I was overthinking things, that careers get demanding and people go through phases. But there was this knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. One Tuesday evening, she told me she had to work late again. Around 9 p.m., I called her office and her assistant said she'd left at 6. When I brought it up the next morning, Olivia looked annoyed and explained she'd gone to dinner with a client and forgot to mention it. Maybe that was true. Maybe I was losing my mind. But I've always trusted my instincts in business, and right now, every instinct was screaming that something was wrong. I love my wife. I didn't want to become that guy who spies on his partner or turns controlling and suspicious. But I also didn't want to be naive. The question that kept me awake at night was, how do you balance trust with protecting yourself? How do you know when that gut feeling is worth listening to? Looking back now, I can tell you that awful space between suspicion and certainty. That's where this story really begins. The weeks that followed were torture. I'd catch myself analyzing every word Olivia said, every expression on her face. Was that hesitation when I asked about her day? Did she seem relieved when her phone didn't ring during dinner? I felt like I was going crazy, second-guessing everything. Marcus kept telling me to either confront her directly or let it go. "You're eating yourself alive, man," he'd say. But I couldn't do either. I needed to know for sure, one way or the other. The breakthrough, if you can call it that, came on a Thursday evening in late October. Olivia was in the shower, and her phone was charging on the nightstand. I'd never gone through her phone before. In 8 years of marriage, we'd always respected each other's privacy. But that night, something inside me snapped. My hands were literally shaking as I picked it up. I told myself I'd just look at recent calls, maybe text messages. Nothing invasive. Just enough to quiet the voice in my head that was screaming something was wrong. The recent calls showed her office, her sister, a few clients I recognized, and then I saw it. Kevin Chun. Multiple calls. Some lasting over an hour. Kevin was a partner at her firm. I'd met him at a few office parties. Married guy, seemed nice enough. But these calls were happening at odd times. Late evenings. Weekends. I checked her text messages next, and that's when I saw it. A thread with Kevin that made my blood run cold. It wasn't explicitly sexual, but the tone. God, the tone was everything. Pet names. Inside jokes. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. And then, the one that broke something inside me. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. I took screenshots before I even realized what I was doing. My attorney brain, maybe, preserving evidence. The shower was still running. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and sat on the edge of our bed, staring at my own phone screen in disbelief. 8 years. 8 years of marriage. And this is how I find out my wife is having an affair. When Olivia came out of the bathroom, I was just sitting there. She asked if I was okay, and I almost laughed. How do you answer that question when your world has just collapsed? I told her I had a headache and went to sleep in the guest room. The next few days were surreal. I went to work, had meetings, analyzed financial reports, all while feeling like I was watching my life from outside my body. Olivia acted completely normal. Kissed me goodbye in the morning, asked about my day when she got home. The casual deception was almost worse than the affair itself. I started paying attention to patterns. The nights she worked late, the weekend calls she took in the other room, the new clothes she'd bought. It was all there. I'd just been too trusting, or too naive, to see it. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the realization that I'd been living with a stranger. This woman I thought I knew better than anyone had been lying to my face every single day, and she was good at it. Really good. I made a decision that week. I wasn't going to confront her yet. I needed more information, and I needed a plan. I called a lawyer, not to file for divorce immediately, but to understand my options. I also did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. Marcus thought I was losing it. Just ask her directly, he kept saying. But I couldn't. I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. Because I knew Olivia, and I knew she'd find a way to explain away those text messages if that's all I had. The investigator's name was Diana Santos. She was professional, discreet, and unfortunately, very good at her job. She told me it would take about a week to get what I needed. That was the longest week of my life. Going through the motions of normal married life while knowing what I knew. Waiting for confirmation of what I already understood to be true. I'd wake up next to my wife and wonder how long this had been going on. Months? Years? But I also realized something during that week. The knot in my stomach was gone. For the first time in months, I wasn't questioning my instincts or my sanity. I knew the truth, even if I didn't have all the details yet. And somehow, that clarity, as painful as it was, felt better than the uncertainty I'd been living with. Diana called me the following Friday afternoon. "We need to meet," she said. "I have what you asked for, but you're not going to like it." We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from anywhere Olivia might be. Diana handed me a manila envelope, and I remember staring at it for a long moment before opening it. Once I looked inside, there would be no going back. The first photo showed Olivia and Kevin entering a hotel about 6 blocks from her office. They weren't holding hands, but they were walking close together, and Kevin's hand was on the small of her back in a way that was definitely not professional. The timestamp showed it was from the previous Tuesday, one of those nights she'd told me she was working late. The second photo was worse. It showed them leaving the same hotel 2 hours later. Olivia was smoothing down her hair, and Kevin was straightening his tie. They looked satisfied, happy even. But it was the third photo that really got to me. It was taken through the hotel bar window, and it showed them sitting in a corner booth, completely absorbed in each other. Olivia had her hand on Kevin's cheek, looking at him the way she used to look at me, the way I thought she still looked at me. "There's more," Diana said gently. She showed me bank records. Kevin had been paying for the hotel room with a credit card. Phone records showed they'd been in contact almost daily for the past 4 months. And then she showed me something that made me feel physically sick. Travel confirmations for a weekend trip to Napa Valley, booked under the names Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. "When is this trip?" I asked. "Next weekend." "She probably hasn't told you about it yet." I sat there in that coffee shop, looking at evidence of my wife's double life, and I felt this strange calm come over me. The uncertainty was over. The waiting was over. Now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. That evening, Olivia came home around 7 p.m., her normal time, not one of her late nights. She seemed cheerful, asked about my day, started talking about weekend plans. I watched her performance with new eyes. She was good at this. Really good. How many other lies had I believed over the years? "Actually," she said while making dinner, "I forgot to mention, I have a girls' weekend planned for next weekend. Sarah's going through a rough divorce, and a few of us are taking her to Napa to cheer her up." There it was, delivered so casually, so naturally. If I hadn't seen the hotel reservations with my own eyes, I would have believed her completely. Hell, I would have encouraged her to go and have fun. "That sounds nice," I said. "Which friends are going?" She rattled off a few names without missing a beat. I knew at least 2 of them were out of town that weekend. I'd seen their social media posts about other plans. But Olivia just kept lying, effortlessly weaving this false story while chopping vegetables for our dinner. I made my decision right then. I wasn't going to let her go on that trip and humiliate me further. I wasn't going to sit at home like a fool while she played house with Kevin in some romantic bed and breakfast. That night, after Olivia fell asleep, I sat in my home office and planned exactly what I was going to say. I wasn't going to be emotional. I wasn't going to yell or accuse. I was just going to present the facts and let her explain herself, though we both knew there was no explanation that would make any of this okay. I also called my attorney and scheduled a meeting for Monday morning. I called my bank and quietly moved half our savings into a separate account. Diana had advised me to protect myself financially before the confrontation. I even packed a bag and left it in my car, just in case things went badly and I needed to stay somewhere else. The next morning was Saturday. Olivia was planning to leave for her fake girls' weekend that afternoon. She was bustling around the house, packing, humming to herself. Actually humming. Like she was excited about her romantic getaway with Kevin. I watched her pack lingerie I'd never seen before. Expensive stuff. She caught me looking and said, "Oh, I picked up a few things. Sarah thought we should all feel sexy and confident this weekend." More lies. So many lies. Around noon, I couldn't take it anymore. She was sitting at the kitchen counter, double-checking her packing list, when I walked in and set the manila envelope down in front of her. "Before you leave for Napa with Kevin," I said quietly, "I think we need to talk." The color drained from her face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the first time in months, maybe years, Olivia had nothing to say. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. The silence stretched between us for what felt like forever. Olivia stared at the envelope, her hand frozen halfway to her coffee cup. I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out what I knew, what I had, how she could possibly explain this away. Finally, she looked up at me. "Jason, I can explain." "Can you?" I interrupted. "Can you explain these photos of you and Kevin entering a hotel? Can you explain why you've been lying to me for months? Can you explain why you're about to leave for a romantic weekend with another man while telling me it's a girl's trip?" Her face went through a series of expressions: shock, fear, calculation, and then something I'd never seen before: genuine panic. The mask was finally off. "How long have you been having me followed?" she asked, which wasn't the response I'd expected. "Long enough to know that our entire marriage has been a lie." "The question is, how long has this been going on, Olivia? Months? Years?" She opened the envelope with shaking hands and looked through the photos. I watched her face as she saw herself with Kevin, saw the evidence of her betrayal laid out in black and white. When she got to the hotel reservations, she actually winced. "6 months," she said quietly. "It's been 6 months. 6 months of lying to me every single day. It's not what you think. It's not what I think." I couldn't keep the anger out of my voice anymore. "What do I think, Olivia? That my wife has been sleeping with her colleague and planning romantic getaways while I sit at home like an idiot? Because that's exactly what's been happening." She started crying then. Real tears, not the crocodile tears she'd used to get out of trouble in the past. "I never meant for this to happen. It developed over time. We were working on this big case together, spending long hours." "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop. Don't give me some cliche about how it just happened. You made choices. Every day for 6 months, you made the choice to lie to me, to cheat on me, to plan secret trips with him. Those weren't accidents, Olivia. Those were decisions." She wiped her eyes, and I could see her trying to regain control, trying to find an angle. Even caught red-handed, she was still calculating. "You're right," she said. "You're absolutely right. I made terrible decisions, and I hurt you. But Jason, we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can." "No." The word came out harder than I intended. "No, we can't. Do you know what the worst part of all this is? It's not even the affair. It's how good you are at lying. It's how easily you've been deceiving me. This morning, you packed lingerie for your trip with Kevin and told me it was for a girls' weekend. You looked me in the eye and lied without even blinking." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I don't know who you are anymore, Olivia. Maybe I never did. But I know I can't trust you. And without trust, we don't have anything. Please, Jason. I'll end it with Kevin. I'll quit the firm if I have to. We can start over." "You can't start over from a foundation of lies." I stood up and walked to the window. Our backyard looked the same as always, but everything felt different now. I've already spoken to an attorney. I've moved money into a separate account. This marriage is over. The crying started again, harder this time. "You can't mean that. 8 years, Jason. 8 years together. 8 years where I thought I was married to someone honest. Someone who respected me enough to tell me the truth. But that person doesn't exist, does she?" Olivia tried several more tactics over the next hour. She begged. She made promises. She even tried to turn it around on me, claiming I'd been distant and inattentive, that she'd been lonely. Classic manipulation. And for a moment, I almost fell for it. Almost started questioning whether I'd somehow driven her to this. But then I remembered those photos. I remembered her humming while packing for her weekend with Kevin. I remembered how effortlessly she'd lied about the girls' trip. "I want you to leave," I finally said. "Go stay with your sister. Go to a hotel. I don't care. But I can't look at you right now. This is my house too. Then I'll leave. But we're not staying under the same roof tonight. She packed a different bag, I noticed, than the one she'd prepared for Napa. Before she left, she turned back to me one more time. I do love you, Jason. I know you don't believe that, but I do. If this is what love looks like to you, I said, then I'm better off without it. After she left, I sat in our empty house and felt something I hadn't expected: relief. For the first time in months, I didn't have to wonder. I didn't have to analyze every word or gesture. I didn't have to pretend everything was normal when it clearly wasn't. The truth hurt, but it was still better than living a lie. I called Marcus and told him everything. He came over with beer and pizza, and we talked until late into the night. He kept apologizing for telling me I was overthinking things, but I didn't blame him. Who wants to believe their friend's wife is capable of such systematic deception? That night, sleeping alone in my own bed for the first time in 8 years, I realized something important. I was going to be okay. It was going to hurt for a while, probably a long while, but I was going to survive this. And more than that, I was going to make sure I never let anyone treat me like this again. The divorce process took 8 months. 8 long, complicated months of lawyers and paperwork and dividing up a life we'd built together. Olivia tried to reconcile twice during that time. Once through tears and promises, once through her attorney with a proposal for marriage counseling. Both times, I said no. I found out later that she'd told people I was being unreasonable, that I wouldn't even try to work things out. Some of our mutual friends actually believed her version of events. It stung, but it also taught me something valuable about who my real friends were. The affair with Kevin imploded spectacularly about 3 months after our confrontation. His wife found their correspondence. Apparently, they'd gotten careless after my divorce proceedings started. She didn't handle it as quietly as I did. Screenshots of their messages ended up on social media, forwarded through their professional network. Kevin's law firm asked him to take a leave of absence to handle his personal matters. Olivia called me when it happened, crying, asking if we could talk. She said she realized now that Kevin had never really cared about her, that she'd thrown away everything good in her life for someone who dropped her the moment things got complicated. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But by then, I was already in therapy with Dr. Sarah Chun, and I'd learned to recognize manipulation when I saw it. Olivia wasn't sorry she'd cheated. She was sorry she'd gotten caught, and sorrier still that her backup plan hadn't worked out. Therapy was probably the best decision I made during that entire period. Dr. Chin helped me understand patterns I'd never noticed, how I'd been people-pleasing and avoiding conflict, how I'd ignored red flags because I didn't want to rock the boat. She helped me see that my instincts had been right all along, and that trusting myself was just as important as trusting others. You stayed married to someone who didn't respect you, she told me during one particularly difficult session. The question now is, how do you make sure that never happens again? It wasn't just about romantic relationships, either. I started setting boundaries at work, with friends, with family members who'd always relied on me to be the accommodating one. It felt strange at first, even selfish. But slowly, I realized that having standards for how I wanted to be treated wasn't selfish at all. It was necessary. I took up hiking, something I'd always wanted to try, but never had time for when I was trying to save my marriage. There's something about being alone in nature that helps put things in perspective. Those Saturday morning hikes became sacred time for me, time to think and process and just be with myself. Marcus was incredible through all of this. He never once said, "I told you so," even though he'd been warning me about Olivia's behavior for years in subtle ways I'd chosen to ignore. He helped me move into my new apartment, introduced me to his hiking group, and was always available when I needed to talk. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Kevin at a coffee shop downtown. He looked terrible, thinner, older, exhausted. He saw me and actually started to approach, like he wanted to say something. I just shook my head and walked away. I had nothing to say to him, and more importantly, I didn't need his apology or explanation to move forward with my life. The most surprising thing about that whole period was how much I began to enjoy my own company. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I wasn't trying to please anyone or manage someone else's emotions. I could come home to a quiet apartment, cook what I wanted for dinner, watch what I wanted to watch, and not have to worry about anyone's mood or agenda. I started traveling too. Small trips at first, weekend getaways to places I'd always wanted to see. then longer trips. I spent 2 weeks in Ireland the summer after my divorce, hiking and exploring and talking to strangers in pubs. It was the first vacation I'd taken in years where I didn't spend the whole time worried about whether my travel companion was having a good time. Dr. Chin kept asking me when I thought I'd be ready to date again. For the longest time, I couldn't imagine trusting someone else with my heart. The idea of being vulnerable again, of believing someone's words over their actions, seemed impossible. But gradually, I started to realize that the problem hadn't been my capacity to trust. The problem had been trusting someone who wasn't trustworthy. There's a difference between being naive and being open to love. You'll know when you're ready, Dr. Chin told me. And when you meet the right person, you'll have better tools to recognize if they're worthy of your trust. She was right, though I didn't know it yet. But that's a story for the next chapter of my life. Looking back on that year of healing, I can see now that it wasn't just about recovering from betrayal. It was about discovering who I was when I wasn't trying to be who someone else needed me to be. It was about learning that being alone is different from being lonely, and that my own company was actually pretty good. Most importantly, I learned that I deserved better than what I'd settled for. And that realization changed everything.